Hello, it's Melinda from Scrapbooking and Craft. Nearly forgot what channel I was taping for. Trying to do a few videos in a row. And poor brain. Welcome to this sped up version of this Facebook art journal page that I did a couple of weeks ago. So if you want to follow this along in real time, there is a real time video. It should be the one before or the one after. On our YouTube channel, I also do a sped up version because I have different clients that prefer different versions. So this was done with our new July release items, so just showing you a few items at the start of what I'm going to use. I'm working in an altered book, so I'm going to use these black circly flowers that are part of my new July release for 2023. Just showing you there my altered book. Now this book has some really funky pictures in it, and I have on another YouTube channel, my personal channel, how I prepare my altered books. So if you're interested in that, I think the link for my other channel is in the description, or just leave a comment and I'll point you in the right direction. But this page with the branch, sometimes in my altered books I use what's on the page, sometimes I just gesso over it and just use the wording as like the text as an element on the page, as like a starting element. Excuse me. But this particular page, I like the branch, but not the little critter that's hanging off the branch, but we get rid of him eventually. So I decided to put some acetate behind my black silhouette shapes. Not sure whether I like the shapes on the page at the end. I'm on the fence about that, but hey, I sat for nearly 2 hours. I had fun. I did a live. Chatted to my lovely friends that come in on my live when I do my business channel. And that's what art journaling for me is all about. It's a time taken to sit and play, as opposed to the finished process. As I said, the page is growing on me. I may do something similar and leave the circles off at a later date. So just grab some acetate and throwing some alcohol inks on there. These ones are just from, I believe, most of them are from Art and Craft. And also putting a bit of blending solution on to make them not so bright and the colours a bit more translucent. So I'm making 2 6x6 inch squares, because I do need, the 3 shapes wouldn't fit on the one 6x6 inch piece of acetate. So just dropping alcohol inks on. If you've not heard of alcohol inks, they're actually a dye-based ink, I believe. Could have that one wrong. Suspended in a bit of alcohol, and they work better, or they must work on a non-porous surface. So acetate is like a plastic, so they need to go on a surface where they won't soak in. They don't work on like regular paper, because they just soak in and they won't do that beautiful blooming and blending thing. Clear as mud, right? So I decided that I'd already put a coat of clear gesso on my page before I started filming, because I knew I wanted to preserve that tree. So now I'm just going in with some white gesso just to push that wording on the right hand side back a bit and try to get rid of a little bit of that grubby thing that's on the tree. I don't know what it is. It's a funny book I'm working in. I don't even know what the title is. A Light in the Attic. So it's just a story of all little poems with really quirky picturey things in it. So basically more pick the book for its paper and size than the pictures that are in it. And that's how I pick my altered book. So just using some white gesso. My gesso is quite translucent, so it's not very opaque. And that's what I wanted in this instance. Some gessos are more opaque than others. I believe I'm using up some from Art and Craft, Eldorado or El de Polo or something brand. So I decided that I was going to use this napkin, and then it didn't make it to the page. I got to the end of the live and took the photo and go, I didn't end up using the napkin. So I decided the napkin would be a perfect size to go across the bottom of the page, sort of as the foreground, the tree would sort of be the middle ground, and so I go to all that trouble with pulling a napkin apart, and then, well, it doesn't make it to the page. Oops! So I decided I'm going to add some colour before I stick my napkin down, because if you've not used napkins before, whatever is white on the napkin goes translucent when you glue it down. So I thought, oh, I'll add some watercolours in the background just to give the background a bit of colour, and then I can stick the napkin on top. Napkin doesn't make it to the page, but that's okay. So I just grabbed some watercolours. These are from Aldi. I love trying out affordable art supplies. I'm a bit of a sucker when I see stuff that's affordable. I want to try it out and see if it is good. These watercolours from Aldi they're better than the cheap cakey ones you get, like the kids ones that are really chalky. I bought some of those in the past. These are sort of Mid-range, they flow a bit better. They're flowing nicely on the gessoed surface as well, and they also got highly pigmented colours. I'd love some professional watercolours, but I've got all these other ones to use up, and these work just as well. So you don't have to go out and buy super expensive stuff to art journal. You can trial and error with some of the cheaper stuff. Some of it's cheap and nasty, some of it's not. So it's just about experimenting. Some people like some of the cheaper stuff, some people don't. So it's just a bit of personal choice. So just adding some green down at the sort of grassy meadow, and then blue, sort of 2/3 of it to the sky. I'm deliberately not wanting it to be a flat colour. Deliberately sort of got more blue here than there, and sort of got a lot of patchiness in it, which you can achieve with watercolours. So just drying that off. A lot of drying in mixed media. So I have sped this video up 4 times. I wish my hands moved this quick. So now that the watercolour is dry, I want to work on the tree branch. So I wanted to give it some tree colours. So I grab out some paint markers and decide to give it a go with some paint markers. So I have my paint markers stored in some pencil cases. I have all my black pens that I use, different sizes, in a black little case. I have white ones in a white case, and I have my coloured ones in a nice coloured pencil case. Trying to keep them organised. Yeah, terrible word in my household. So getting my paint pen to start would be a good idea. Obviously this one's a bit neglected and hasn't been used much before. Sorry, the video accidentally cut out there and I had to restart the live, so here's the second portion of the video. So working on that tree a bit more. I didn't want to have it totally come to the front. I still wanted it to be sort of in that middle ground, so not so bright and leery, but I wanted to give it some colour as well. Then I decided that we're going to do some stenciling. So these stencils are from my Scrapbooking and Craft store. The link to my website is always below. So we've got a Facebook page, an Instagram page, this YouTube channel, and a website, all under that same business name. So this is one of our new July release stencils. So it sort of looked a bit like clouds. So I decided to put some sort of grey blue clouds in the background again. I didn't want it to be bright and leery. It's quite subtle. You can see it when you're quite close to the page. I'm not sure whether you're going to see it in the video, just because sometimes the colours on the monitors don't show a lot of detail. Just using a blending brush. These are fantastic details for stencils, and you can get a very light coat of colour, or you can get a very dark intense coat of colour, just depending on how many times you go over the same spot and how hard you press. So I grabbed this one, another one of our 6x4 inch stencils, and I decided to add some of the sprinkly dots, they almost look like hundreds and thousands, into the grass below with a green. The reason I'm using archival inks is, hey, those inks were close by and they were the colours I wanted. There's no reason why I couldn't have used distress oxides, distress inks, but the archival inks are permanent. So obviously the blue and the white, the blue and the green watercolour I've got down are not permanent. So putting archival inks over the top, if I want to do anything more water reactive over the top, at least my archival inks will not move. So this is the black lace cut images I'm going to use from my July release. So just snipping them out of the frame. They're a bit easier for me to package and to sell and display in the frames. So just wanting to glue those onto my acetate pieces. Just trying to pick pieces of the coloured acetate that aren't too colourful, and I end up going with really colourful bits. This art journal page certainly went on a journey through a few different things that I thought I'd do that I didn't end up doing, but that's half the fun. So when I'm gluing things like this on that are quite lacy designs, I pick sort of the fattest pieces and put a bit of glue under them. I'm using a Couture Creations glue that dries clear, so if it does sort of come out from underneath, you're not going to see it. It's all-purpose art glue, that's what it's called, and it's got a very fine tip on it, which is really cool as well. So just cutting around the acetate so it's not protruding past the shape. They're circles, so they're quite easy to cut out. I do this a lot actually. I will back, while I'm backing these ones or putting acetate behind their shapes, I'll often put pattern paper behind my shapes, or solid paper, solid colours. just to make the shape stand out so it doesn't get totally lost on the page. If I was to stick these black shapes straight on the page, I believe they'd get lost a bit. Sometimes I stick the lacy shapes directly on. It depends on what sort of background I've used underneath. No hard and fast rules without journaling. What looks good to you works well. Oh, I'm adding a bit more alcohol ink to make them a bit more pink. That's what I was doing. So I was trying to work out what I was doing. And I'll pop those aside for just a moment to dry. The alcohol ink doesn't take doesn't take long to dry. Probably 5 or 10 minutes, depending on. Probably more like 5 than 10 minutes. So I decided that my page needed an edge and a border. So I grabbed the same color ink pads that I used on the blue and the green, and dust it around the edge. I border 99% of my pages. It could be a dusting of ink like this. It could be a thick border. It could be a doodled border. It just depends on what the page needs, but I believe all pages sort of need a border or an edge. Because then your eye sort of stops at the edge and wanders back in. If you don't have a border, your eye sort of wanders off the page and wonders if it wants to keep going. So just having a play around with the circles, just sort of thinking, I was thinking at this stage whether I really wanted to put them on, but then I thought, no, I've done all this work, I'll go for it, I'll stick them on. As I said, I'm on the fence a little whether I like the circles on the page or not. They sort of, in my mind, they were going to be hanging from the tree, like decorative lanterns, decorative flowers. One ends up nesting in the grass, and a couple of look like they're hanging from the tree. So now I'm just grabbing out some more markers or different coloured textures and things to do a bit more work on the branches, because the branch was not as toned in colour as I wanted. It was a bit flat in colour, so just working on that a bit more. I do apologise that my head keeps coming into screen. For anyone that's new to me and my channel, I do have low vision, so when I'm doing detailed work, unfortunately I have to be a lot closer to my book, and I've not got a good setup with my camera so I can film 2 different angles. I may look at doing that, so when I'm doing close up I can film at a different angle and then do all the overhead shots with when I'm doing other stuff. I don't know, but my head's usually not in the shot for long, so I'm happy with that tree now. I tend to not stick my focal images down until I'm right sort of at the end. I will move them around, and now I've decided to grab, this is Find Your Happy Place. This is one of the words I released in July 2023. So I decided to snip it in half because it didn't really fit up where I wanted it, because I wanted to put that round floral accent. So I actually, even though I design the shapes, I tend to cut a lot of them up when I finally come to put them on the page. And there's no reason why you can't do that. The embellishments is yours, you've paid for it, so do to it as you wish. This could also be cut into 4 pieces, so you could scatter them around a bit more as well. And I try to join words where if you cut them apart, it doesn't look like you've got a half cut off letter. Does that make sense? Clear as mud, right? So then I felt the page needed a little more detail-y stuff, so I decided to grab out my extensive pile of Art by Marlene die cuts that I love using with my own images that I make for my store. And I end up picking out a couple of little houses, a snail, a bird and a sun. The ladies on the live was having a great chat to me about what their suggestions were. I love the Art by Marlene die cuts, and I get them from my friend at Hillbilly Scrapping, and she gets all the new ranges when they come in, which hurts my credit card. But they tend to go with just about every project I've pulled them out for. They're so bright and happy and colourful, and they're just a nice accent to add. So again, just playing around, I move the houses around a few times just to get the placement right, change them around, put them to the front, to the back, and move the snail, and sort of trying to make clusters but not make clusters, if that makes sense. So not have images just floating, So I put the bird on the tree. I've got the two little houses sort of overlapping, so they're sort of clustered together. On that right hand side I've got a little house and a snail and one of the floral accents, so it's like a cluster but they're not really touching. And then the sun, well, the sun's just up in the sky. It can float around when I put it in a minute. So I decide it's time to stick and commit. So gluing everything down. Again, using that same Couture Creations Art all-purpose art glue. My label has nearly disappeared off my bottle because I need to possibly get a new one. It's getting very empty. Too much art journaling. So again, when I'm sticking the words down, I'm only adding a little bit of glue to the fattest areas of where the letters are. I try not to stick a lot in the spine of my books and my art journals because the spines do get quite bulky, but this time I couldn't help it and it just had to be placed in the spine. This is where I'm looking for the sun, and I know I've seen suns in Art by Melinda die cuts before, so I finally find one. I was going to go a sun and a rainbow, but I think I've used all those. So this video is just about to come to an end. Thank you very much for sticking around and watching. Leave me a comment. I love to read comments about my art journal pages. I know some of them are quite weird, but hey, that's me and my personality. I had fun doing the page. That's the only thing that matters some days. There are some close-up photos at the end for you to check out more detail, and if you do want to see more detailed photos of these, you can check it out on our Facebook page, which is the same name as that website sitting there on screen. So it's Scrapbooking&Craft. Same name as the YouTube channel. I managed to get all our social medias exactly the same, which was really, really cool and easy to find. Here are some close-up pictures, and thank you very much for watching. Have a great day. Bye for now.